Hello. Welcome. It's Happy Earth Day. Happy Earth Day. Happy Earth Day. I'm so excited. We have an amazing speaker today, Mr. Joe Dunn from Friends of Lake Apopka. I see some new faces, which is very exciting. I'm Christy Goman. I'm the executive director here at the Winter Garden Heritage Foundation. If you don't know about us, I encourage you to learn more about us. You can go to wghf.org. We are in the midst of, and I'm just going to real quickly, planning out America 250. Does everybody does know that we are turning 250 yes. Right? Yes. Okay. Well, we are so excited. We have a full summer lineup, and we are just announcing, you're the first to know. We are doing another event at the Garden Theater end of July. It is going to be a tribute to America 250 through music and wonderful historic photos. Patriotism on Plant is what it's called, and it is a tribute through music. What is the official title? Patriotism on Plant, celebrating America's 250th. So you're the first to know. Tickets will be on sale on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Okay, so that's that. We have our monthly lunch and learns, heritage happy hours, museum. We change out our exhibits quarterly. If you're not a member, I would encourage you to become a member. It's not a lot of money, but it enables us to continue to do what we do like this. Our lunch and learns are about focusing on other people making a difference in West Orange County. Last year we had our friends at Oakland Nature Preserve. This month we have Joe Dunn. So I encourage you, help us to continue to educate others around us about all of our community partners. We're not just a history museum or a history center, we're a heritage and cultural center. So it's the responsibility of all of us to share our knowledge and help everybody else. So I'm going to pass out, you don't have to do anything, but if you don't mind, if you're not a member and you want to become one, it's $25. And this is, we just need an email and we'll follow up with you. And just know that it helps us continue to help others. So without further ado, I'll have Amanda pass these out. And I'm going to introduce Joe Dunn. Absolutely.
Okay. Can you hear me? Is the mic loud enough? Do I need to talk louder? No?
Should be good.
Good? Awesome. So, as Christy said, I'm Joe Dunn. I'm on the board of directors of Friends of Lake Apopka. First disclaimer is that I'm not a biologist and I'm not an environmental scientist. I'm a retired aerospace executive who happens to live on the lake. So Lake Apopka is literally my backyard, and that's how I got involved in it, because when my wife and I built our house there, we went and talked to Jim Thomas, the founder of FOLA, and asked him to teach us how to be good stewards of the lakefront. And he immediately swept me into his vortex and got me involved in FOLA, and then he got ill, and I took over leading FOLA temporarily 11 years ago. So my term is almost up, but I am a University of Florida certified master naturalist, which simply means that I went and took 6 weeks of classes in uplands habitat, 6 weeks in wetlands, which is lakes and streams, and 6 weeks in coastal. But it gave me a pretty good, solid understanding of the different nuances of Florida's ecology, because I'm a transplant. We've been here in Winter Garden for 11 years, and probably in Florida, I worked for Lockheed Martin over on the east side many, many moons ago. So overall, I've probably spent close to 20 years of my life here, but I am literally a transplant. So what I wanted to do real quick, because I recognize some familiar faces, and I know there are people that know more about the Lake Apopka and the history here than I do, like Christy, who's fourth generation, and I'm a transplant first generation. But I do like to start with a little bit of what's the geographic significance, and then a little bit about what the history is, talk about where we are now, and then talk about where we're going for the next 30 years. I don't want to block anybody. So everybody gets excited because Lake Apopka is the 4th largest lake in the state of Florida. 31,000 acres. There are only 3 lakes bigger. Number 1 is a gimme, Okeechobee. 2 is Lake George, and 3 is Lake Kissimmee. Lake Seminole would be in there, except it is man-made, so we don't count them. They're disqualified. But the 4th largest lake in Florida, and that's not really why it's important. It's important because it's the headwaters of the Ocklawaha River Basin. So the water flows from Lake Apopka up through the Apopka-Beauclair Canal, through the Harris chain of lakes. I call them the ABC lakes because it's Apopka, Beauclair, Carlton, Dora, Eustis, No F, Griffin, Harris. So it flows through all those lakes and then goes the Ocklawaha River up through Silver Spring and Ocala, and then into the St. Johns River all the way to Jacksonville. So you can go out here to Newton Park and get in a boat and go all the way to Jacksonville.
That's cool.
And that's a powerful selling point when we go to the state legislature and ask for money, because what happens in Lake Apopka affects all of Central Florida and Northeastern Florida. So it's tremendous geographic significance. Quick history lesson. So going back to 1893, citrus farmers and regular farmers, I mean, it wasn't just citrus back then, wanted to find a way to get their goods up to Boston and Washington and Philadelphia and New York. So we think there was a little stream there, and they just expanded it and made it a canal. It took them 7 years to dig the canal so that the boat would be wide enough for boats to take the cargo up through the path that I just described. And the minute they finished, the canal was obsolete, because then the railroads existed and they could send it up via railroad. But that started the ecological history of Lake Apopka, because the lake used to be 50,000 acres. All of this light green you see up here, which is now the North Shore, was lake. And when they dug the Apopka-Beauclair Canal, they lowered the entire lake by 3 feet. So that made this area even more shallow. 1941 comes around, we're in World War II, and we need vegetables and produce, so they build a dam across the top 20,000 acres here. Pump all that water out. Now remember, it's kind of shallow because of the Apopka-Beauclair Canal, but they pump the water out into the lake, and that what was the lake bottom is now very fertile soil that's referred to as muck. They could grow 3 crops a year instead of the normal 1 crop. So they tripled vegetable production. It was a very patriotic thing to do. And that 20,000 acres of farms contributed significantly. Unfortunately, by fertilizing and then pumping water into the lake when it's wet, and then taking water from the lake into the North Shore and the farms, that back and forth transferred huge amount of nutrients. And within 5 to 7 years, they started seeing fish kills. This was the Eastern United States bass capital of the world. This lake was crystal clear. People came from all over the country to fish here. And when the nutrients started creating algal blooms, they weren't worried about the ecology. They were worried that the game fish were dying. It was very situational. So they started to notice in the late 40s and early 50s that their lake was starting not to be a haven for bass anymore, that the game fish were dying and the trash fish were proliferating. And over the next 50 years, the lake just kept getting worse and worse and worse. The city of Winter Garden pumped effluent from their water treatment plant in. Apopka did the same. All the citrus farms down here on the South Shore, when they treated their citrus, they pumped citric acid into the lake. So there were a lot of contributors, but those farms on the North Shore contributed 85% of the nutrients into the lake. So in 1991, my personal hero, Jim Thomas, a winter garden biologist, created Friends of Lake Apopka to try to do something about the lake. And if you go back, and he was a pack rat, and he kept all of these old magazine articles, newspaper letters to the governor, FOLA meeting minutes, and they're all back here in this museum in the archives. There's 32 4-inch binders. He was a pack rat, and he kept everything. And we used to have parties at his house on Saturday where we'd set up 10 of these tables, and we'd say, okay, let's do the 1950s, and you'd put 51, 52, and go around. Then once you got them all sorted by year, then in 1951 you do January, February, March, April, May, and then once you got it, and then you do January 1st through January 31st. So that went out, volunteers did that over the weekend and put all that stuff together, and it's here as a primary source. So, but for that 50 years, there were efforts. People tried to do something about the lake. For instance, the federal government said, okay, yeah, we'll give you a pile of money to clean up this lake in 1960s, and the Vietnam War happened, and all the funding evaporated. So there were fits and starts for 50 years, but this one man, Jim Thomas, tried for 5 years to get the lake, or the farmers, to self-police, and for whatever reason, somebody had a small patch of ground, you couldn't set a bunch of it aside for a retention pond, there are a lot of different reasons, but after 5 years of trying, Jim Thomas, one man can make a difference, and a young freshman state senator by the name of Buddy Dyer. I don't know if you've ever heard of that guy, the mayor of Orlando. The two of them convinced the state legislature to buy every single one of those farms for $100 million. In 1996, the legislation was passed. It took 2 years to complete the purchase of the land. The day that farming started, farming's not bad, but those farms were putting nutrients in the lake, is the day that Lake Apopka started to heal. Biologists use parts per billion of phosphorus as kind of the key metric for the health of the lake. And at that time, the phosphorus in Lake Apopka was about 280 parts per billion. Today it's 55. So for 30 years, they made progress. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. But that was such a pivotal moment that, and one of the tactics that they used was they took clear soda bottles, filled it with this mucky brownish green water, and labeled it FOLA Cola, and put it on the desk of every single member of the Florida legislature. And they got their point across, and that helped convince the legislature to pony up $100 million, and the healing of Lake Apopka began. FOLA actually founded Oakland Nature Preserve. We're sister organizations, and Jim Thomas got the 128 acres, and if you go there, that teaching center is the Jim Thomas Environmental Education Center. They named it after him.
Where is it?
Oakland Nature Preserve is about a mile and a half west in Oakland. It's just off of Oakland Avenue, and it's a 128-acre preserve. Our mission is advocacy, citizen advocacy. Their mission is education.
But this Jim Thomas is inside the
Oh, the cabin, that building with the classroom and the museum, that's the Jim Thomas Environmental Education Center. I can't remember what year we named it that, and Buddy Dyer came and spoke to honor Jim Thomas. So then in 2003, I'm going to talk about the things that have happened to make the lake where it is now, to get it from 280 parts per billion to 55 today. Number one was getting rid of the muck farms and turning it in, restore it. The state gave that property to St. Johns River Water Management District and told them to restore it to a natural wetlands the way that it was before. So we call them the district, because every time I refer to them, I say St. Johns River Water Management District will be here until 5 o'clock tonight. But They've done an extraordinary job. They really have. So the district got it. And the first thing that they did, other than we're not putting nutrients into the lake from the farms anymore, was they built something called the Marsh Flowway, which is 720 acres of big retention ponds. Think about 4 very large retention ponds. The water flows from the lake, and it's up here, Marsh Flowway. So, another fact, 50 years of farming up there, every decade they farmed, you got 1 foot of subsidence. The ground packed down. So 50 years, this is 5 feet lower than this. So up here in the Marsh Flowway, they just open a gate, and the water flows in, and it goes through these retention ponds called the Marsh Flowway very slowly over the course of a week. And it's just natural vegetation, eelgrass, different kinds of natural aquatic vegetation at the bottom of it. And as it meanders through, it naturally precipitates, the phosphorus and other heavy metals precipitate to the bottom. And then when it gets back all the way around to the lake, they've got to pump it up 5 feet to get it back into the lake. Their electric bill for those pumps is $10,000 a month, but it's still a very, very effective way to treat the phosphorus, and very natural, no chemicals. But about once every 5 years, you've got to take the retention pond and scrape it out and get all that stuff, take it away. And they just redid one of the cells, I think 2 years ago. But that was another big cornerstone project. Then in 2015, they wanted people to be able to come and see what was going on up there in the North Shore, and they opened the Lake Apopka Wildlife Drive. How many people have been there? It's a crown jewel of this region. It's open on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and federal holidays. It's 11 miles one way. Every time we have visitors from out of town, we take them up there. And it's my happy place because Monday through Thursday, you can go up there on your bicycle and you don't have to compete with anybody else. Just don't go in the middle of summer because there's not 1 ounce of shade up there. But the Wildlife Drive opened in 2015. That was a big, hairy deal. And then the United Nations has a program where they try to encourage people to go see restoration projects that have been successful. And we got them to designate Lake Apopka as a restoration road trip destination. So if you go to the UN website and say, restoration road trip, a map of the world will come up, and you can zone in on the U.S., and there's dots all over the U.S. of different projects that were successful. And Lake Apopka Restoration today is one of those. I talked about the North Shore acquisition, Marsh Flowway. Those are 2 big things that have made a difference in the last 30 years. Gizzard shad are a bottom-feeding fish. They're a garbage fish. They're not a game fish like bass or crappie or bluegill. So and because of their bottom feeders, they stir up phosphorus that's down at the bottom of the lake, and they ingest phosphorus and they exgest, they poo phosphorus. Biologists call gizzard shad pee machines, phosphorus machines. So what the district does is they give 8 or 12 fishermen every year a permit to go out there October through December usually, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later, and they catch 1 million pounds of gizzard shad every year and take it to Louisiana and sell it for fertilizer or bait. So that's another way for them to get a very cost-effective way, because they don't have to pay the fishermen. They can just give them a permit and they go do it. And then the last one is not only an indicator, but an improver. Planting native aquatic vegetation. All of the native aquatic vegetation in Lake Apopka died in the 1940s. All of it. There was none for 40 or 50 years. And the district, I guess maybe about 8 years ago, started replanting native aquatic vegetation, eelgrass, Illinois pondweed, and it started to take hold, and they put about $500,000 a year into the lake of a new native aquatic vegetation. So that's not only a way to help clean the lake and make it better, but it's also an indicator of the health of the water quality. Because if the native aquatic vegetation is flourishing, then you know that the lake is doing well. Non-native are called invasives, and there's a particularly nasty one called hydrilla that just absolutely goes nuts. It can grow. At one point, we would call them the hydrilla wars. In 2019, there were 14,000 of the acres of the 31,000 acre lake were hydrilla. So we started to get alarmed, and for 2 years we went to FWC and said, would you please do something about this? Would you do something about this? FWC's primary mission is hunters and anglers. They like hydrilla because it attracts ducks and it attracts fish. The downside to hydrilla is if you let it go, it grows 300 acres a week in the summertime, in the hot summertime. And it just takes over the lake, and it mats on the top and creates low oxygen and low sunlight, so the native plants can't survive that. The hydrilla can. Hydrilla came to the U.S. in the 1950s in South Florida from Southeast Asia for aquariums. If you got a little plant that'll do really well with no oxygen and no light, put it in your aquarium, which is great until mommy and daddy get tired of feeding the guppies and they dump the aquarium out into one of our water bodies, and that's all it takes. One little sprig and it goes nuts. And that's part of the problem with removing hydrilla, is that your boat goes to it, chops a couple of sprigs, they float off and reproduce, or your boat trailer gets some on it and you take it to another lake. So the University of Florida has done many studies. You can't get rid of it, you can only contain it. So after 2 years of asking FWC to do it politely, and they didn't, we went to their bosses in the state legislature and said, you are wasting an awful lot of taxpayers' money trying to kill just a little bit of it every year. So we asked for $5 million for them to knock it back to 100 or 500 acres, which is about what we've had for the last 20 years. And they gave us $7 million because they recognized they didn't want to keep getting bled every year. So you get it back down to 500 acres. When it gets to 1,000, you treat it. And that costs $100,000 instead of $7 million. So they immediately bought in on the economics of it. And we have a commitment now from FWC that they'll keep it contained at 500 acres. But so there's bad vegetation, there's good vegetation. And the healthy stuff is something that the district is doing really well so far. This is what I talked about, going from 280 parts down to 55. And what are all those bumps and dips? Are drought and hurricanes. So think about it. You got 54 billion gallons of water out there on average, and you get a hurricane or 2 or 3 or 4, like 2004, and the water level goes up, it dilutes, right? So your phosphorus levels go down. And you get a drought like we've been in for the last couple of years and the lake level's low, then it's more concentrated. So you just have to look at kind of the average, but it definitely has gotten down. And 55 was the goal 25 years ago. That doesn't mean it's the end game. It just means that somebody had the vision 25 or 30 years ago to say, if we could do that, that would be a really good thing. And they did it. So hats off to the district. The rest of the lakes in the Harris chain of lakes are in the 20s. So that's what we'd like to get from 55 down to 20. And we will eventually, but like every project, the last mile is the hardest, right? So that's what the focus has been for the last 30 years. And the district's done an amazing job of that. I'm sorry, please ask questions. We don't have to wait till the end. How long do I think it'll take? If we keep using the marsh flowway, we keep taking gizzard shad out, we keep adding aquatic vegetation, And about once every 3 to 5 years, somebody comes in with what they call a silver bullet technology, and the district tries it, and we've probably tried, in the 11 years I've been here, we probably tried 3 or 4, and nobody's found the silver bullet yet. But they keep trying. If we just rely on the core ones and don't find a silver bullet, I figure it's probably another 15 years maybe. And the district is going to keep doing what they're doing as far as phosphorus goes. And as a result, oh yeah, please.
The chain of lakes, these 4 lakes you mentioned, does the water from Lake Apopka correlate with these lakes, and are they in Claremont?
And are they what?
In Claremont.
Claremont.
No, we're not connected to the Claremont lakes at all. But we are connected up through the Harris chain of lakes, and that water does flow from here to there. And if you think about it, as it goes to Beauclair, and Beauclair's in the 20s, it gets diluted a little bit, and Carlton gets diluted a little bit, and so that dilutive effect is going to help over time, but we're not connected at all to the Claremont Lakes. Yes?
So, there's homes that are built on the lake now, and more homes that are being built on the lake now. And then people put landscapes in their homes, and then they want to fertilize, and so, and the ground is very sandy, and I believe that fertilizer may very well be able to end up down in the lake in that way as well.
Absolutely.
And so I'm sitting here going, I've never seen anything about recommendations around fertilizing when you have a home on the lake or close to the lake. But, there are fish dying in that lake all the time. And they're, as they decompose, that's a natural part of what happens. And so I just started, I was in the plant business for forever. And I'm perfectly aware of fish emulsion fertilizers. And I start wondering, well, would that be a safer way? Would that be something that could be recommended as a way of putting fertilizers in your landscape that would not be so harmful?
It's certainly something that we should look at. Right now, both in Orange County and Lake, I should have said at the beginning, 1/3 of the lake on the left-hand side is Lake County and 2/3 of it is Orange County, and the North Shore is St. John's River Watermen's District. So every time I have to talk about the lake, I get to talk to Lake County, Orange County, and the state. If you ever tried to herd cats and get 3 agencies at those levels to actually do something together, it's challenging, but my tag phrase is tenacity is a lot more important than brilliance. So Lake County and Orange County both forbid fertilizers in the summertime when it's the driest. Or not, it's the wettest. You're going to get this lake, by the way, has a spring, a Gordon Neck, but it's only 22 CFS, and that isn't what fills the lake. Rain and runoff is what creates the lake level here. So to your point, it's really important that we make sure that those nutrients, after we got all these nutrients, and then the lake starts to heal and everybody wants to live here, you don't want to create another problem. And what we do is, for instance, Oakland Park has no lakefront homes. They only have lake view homes. And we hold that as the gold standard. And we go to HOAs and try to get them to, and developers to first build that way. And if they don't, then we try to go to HOAs and say, please, here's how you should be respectful of that. So it's definitely an issue, Sandy, absolutely. But with all this improvement in the lake, it's not perfect yet, and we're going to talk about that it's not perfect yet, but a lot of ecotourism has evolved, and it started with birding. Orange Audubon Society started a North Shore Birding Festival. It used to be called Birdapalooza, and then I guess just before COVID, it became the North Shore Birding Festival. Because you got this beautiful restored marshland, wetlands, migrating birds are attracted to it. There are now 378 different species of birds up there during the migratory system, which I believe is now #1, more than the Everglades and more than Merritt Island. So it has become a birder's paradise. Cycling. 2017, we started a bike ride called the FOLA 40 to, one, raise awareness about the continuing restoration of the lake. Two, we've got amazing trail system here. Orange County, we've got the West Orange Trail. Over in Lake County, you've got the South Lake Trail and the Hancock Road Trail. And on the North Shore, you've got a 17.5-mile gravel trail that goes across there. But in order to do that circumnavigation of the lake, you have to ride 3 miles on a Apopka road, shoulderless road, to get to Binion. You have to ride 3 miles windy shoulderless road from Green Mountain down to Hancock Road. So the very first year we did the FOLA 40 bike ride, then Orange County Commissioner Betsy Vanderlei and then Orange County Commissioner Brian Nelson rode with my wife from Winter Garden to Magnolia Park. The minute they got on a Apopka road, they jumped on the sidewalk. And then within a year, got $10.9 million to connect the trail from Apopka up into Magnolia Park. The next year, after we were sure of that, we went to the state and tried to get $2 million for Lake County to close that loop. We got all the way through the legislature, got on the governor's desk, and COVID hit. And he vetoed all trails, the whole state, because they had to find $1 billion of revenue. So it was without prejudice. But because we put the work in the previous year, the next year they gave us $2 million, boom. And then, so those two sections, December of last year, the connector trail opened, so you no longer have to go on a road up by Green Mountain down to Hancock Road. February 28th of this year, the east side open. We now have a 47-mile safe cycling loop all the way around a lake. In fact, this is the shirt from the ride we did on Sunday, and it says not connect the trails, but we connected the trails. And we started in 2017 with 65 riders and word of mouth, and we had to cap it at 300 riders last Sunday because we could have put 500 people out there, but I didn't want to worry about safety, and I wanted to keep it fun. And 300 seems like a really good number, but that cyclists are now most importantly, that 47-mile loop sits on the coast-to-coast connector, Florida bike trail from Titusville all the way down to St. Petersburg. So cyclists will start in Titusville, come here, spend the night, do that 47-mile loop, and then move on. So this is going to be, cyclists are like, I'm an avid cyclist, recreational, not hardcore, just a slowpoke. But cyclists are like birders. They collect rides, don't they? Just like birders collect the life species list. So this is going to be a big, hairy deal that people are going to come here to ride this trail. Word's going to get out across the nation, and cyclists are going to come do the Lake Apopka loop. The first challenge I had for the bike ride last Sunday was getting a map, because asking Orange County and Lake County and the district to please compile their maps into one, they'll do it, but it just was created on February 28th. So ask me again in February of 2027, and we might have an official map. The owner of Winter Garden Wheelworks, Dennis Jones, went out on his bike and rode it and mapped it on GPS so that we had a map. But when word gets out, people will be coming from all over, and we're trying to get it designated as a national recreation trail, which will give it some credibility and gravitas. So.
Yeah.
Then the other thing, we call it the trifecta. Bicyclists are coming in 2021, I think it was. Yeah, 2021. The water quality is improved enough that the bass are back in large numbers. A huge number. I mean, it is. So we had a tournament, and we met with Orange County Parks and the district. And they wanted to do a bass tournament, but there's only 4 places you can get on this lake: Newton Park, Magnolia Park, McDonald Boat Ramp up on North Shore, and there's a decrepit ramp over at Mount Verde. None of those has room for 100 pickup trucks with trailers. So how could we have a bass tournament without having a major overhaul of one of the parks? FWC tagged 500 fish. So in their dorsal fin, they put a little tag and it says FOLA number 1 through FOLA number 500, call 1-800-FWC. And for middle of January to the middle of May, we said, if you catch one of those fish and you call it in, we'll put you in a pool for $5,000 worth of prizes. And if you catch the biggest fish, her name, because the big fish, big bass are always girls, because they're mamas, was that we used number 91 because 1991 FOLA was founded, and we named that fish Jim Thomas. And we said, if you catch that fish, we'll give you $5,000 in cash. So we had $10,000 in prizes, and we were patting ourselves on the back because we sat there and did a statistical analysis of 31,000 acres and one fish, and what are the probabilities of somebody catching it, and in the second month, somebody caught it. And the fishing effort on Lake Apopka doubled in that 3 months from the previous year, doubled. And FWC went out and asked people, well, why are you out here? I want to catch that $5,000 fish. So it raised a lot of awareness about the water quality improvement that led. And now bass tournaments that start usually over in Lake Harris, professional tournaments that you see on TV, they come through the Apopka Beauclair Canal to get their big fish and then go back over to Lake Harris and fill out their catch. And several of the winners, 1, 2, and 3, have gotten fish of professional bass. So bass fishing has really taken off again in the lake. Yes, sorry. So, geographically significant because it's headwaters, a lot of history, and we're getting better, but we're not there. So what's the next thing that we're going to try to tackle? 31,000 acres, you can barely see the other side of the shore. Everybody thinks it's a really deep lake. Average depth is 5.5 feet. So if you get out in the middle of the lake and your boat sinks, stand up. But there are some deep spots. This little trough here between Winter Garden and Oakland is 18 feet. So it's a very big, shallow lake. There's 50 years of dead plants on the bottom, right? Because every plant in that lake died in the 1940s and on, and that's muck. So anytime you get a wind going over, it's 8 miles from here to here, 6 miles from here to here, unimpeded, wind just churns the water up, and anytime you get a strong wind, which is pretty much every day, it takes that muck on the bottom and churns it up into the water column, and it looks greenish gray. That's a Secchi disc. That's the way they measure the clarity of the water. You lower that disc until you can't see the black and white separation anymore, and then measure the length of the string. So in the old days, it was like 6 inches. It was pea green. Today, you can probably go out there in certain parts of the lake and get 12 or 18 inches. But that's how they measure, and it's called turbidity. So when I go to the Rotary and I give a presentation like this, and I say, we went from 280 to 55, yay, they look out the window at Tanner Hall and see this brownish green lake and go, I don't believe a word you're saying. So there's a public perception issue, but there's also a biological issue because that cloudy water impedes sunlight that the native plants need, and nasty conditions favor the invasives that we want to try to keep out. So there's a biological need, there's a physical need, a recreational need because people don't want to use the lake. So the district, that chart over there on the left, they map the entire lake and where all the concentrations of muck are, so that if you wanted to try to dredge the entire lake, it's a little over $2 billion. And they were trying to get the federal government to maybe buy into that, and that dog didn't hunt. So what we decided to do is eat the elephant a bite at a time. If we could start doing a project, a $15, $20 million project every year for the next 20 years, my grandsons, who are now 9 and 11, might actually see a clear water column again. So the very first project that we decided to attack was at Newton Park, right down here. And we're going to do a 60-acre channel going out from the boat ramp. They're going to take the muck out, and it's not like when you think of dredging, you tend to think of a big clamshell thing digging holes, which is, but this is more the soft, silty stuff that floats up into the water column. That's really what we want to try to get rid of. So we're going to dig a 60-acre channel. It's hard to see, I apologize, because it's green on green, but this dotted line here is, there's the Newton Park and the boat ramp. And then you can run 1,100 trucks, dump trucks, from there to get rid of the muck, and then everybody in Trailer Park City will be out with their pitchforks and their torches, and the people that use Newton Park. So what they decided to do as an alternate is they're going to put a series of barges with pipes, and they're going to run it 6 miles north up to the North Shore. Remember how I told you had 5 feet of subsidence? You're taking the muck out of the bottom of the lake and thin spraying it up there in the marsh, in the wetlands, and it's a win-win. You're getting it out of the lake and you're rebuilding the marshes up on the North Shore. So we're in the process of putting that together, and one of the things we discovered was that Magnolia Park, this you can see here where the pipes go up to the North Shore. Magnolia Park, which is 2 miles north of us, has the same problem. And if you got Orange County on board and got them to time theirs so that when you finish Newton Park, all you had to do was move everything 2 miles north, the mobilization cost of putting that dredger in there and all those pipes and all those repeater pumps is a big chunk of change. So Orange County could get a sweetheart deal if they piggybacked on this and we just shifted everything north. So that's the second project. And the idea is if we can get one project, yay, crow on your success, tie it to another one, build some momentum, and then just start trying to do a $15, $20 million project every year that eventually will get enough of the muck out of the lake that it'll go back to being that beautiful. I don't think it'll ever be a sandy bottom lake like it was in the 1930s, but we can get it to where it's not brownish green. So how are we going to go about that? We found that collaboration is everything that FOLA does is collaboration. Everything. We don't do anything. We're a bunch of citizen advocates. We're the cheerleaders. But if you go and ask somebody to give you $15 million in this day and age, you usually get laughed out of the room. So what we did is we went to the federal government and Congressman Daniel Webster and asked him for $7 million. And then we asked state for $4 million. And then we asked Orange County for $3 million. And then we asked the city of Winter Garden for $1 million. And in principle, everybody's agreed to that. Daniel Webster's already given us $3 million. We have $3 million in hand. FDEP has given FOLA, it's unprecedented, that a little 501c3 with volunteers, no paid employees, got $600,000 from the state to do all the planning. So we actually have that money under contract with a local firm called Blue Terra. They're here in Winter Garden to do all the planning and equipment specking and site survey, and the permits have been submitted. So with any hope, we'll get, if they give you the initial sum of money, they usually give you the follow-on sums. And then the county, the only problem with the county and the city, and I'm digressing a little bit, but you know that Tallahassee, the state legislature, is considering property tax reform. And that's a giant question mark, because if they stop taking those taxes, it doesn't mean it's free. It means it's on the counties and on the municipalities to pick up that. And to give you a hint, if the way the law is written right now in the House version, Winter Garden would have to pay $14 million more for us to just stay even. So a lot of county and municipalities are going to have to either raise taxes or cut services if that happens. So getting the commitment for next year dollars has been a challenge, but all of them have agreed in principle. And for instance, the district has already budgeted $500,000 for native aquatic vegetation, right? So what they're going to do is, then the project for next year, that 60-acre channel, they're going to put eelgrass and other native vegetation around the edges to try to keep it from filling back in. So they're contributing that. FWC has grants where they'll give you between $500,000 and $2 million to upgrade your boat ramp if you're doing other improvements. So we're getting all these people to put money into the pot, and the hardest one to get always is the first one. And Congressman Webster was kind enough to be the first $3 million, and that helped to get everybody else to be a little more generous.
So I live in Lake County. I don't live here in Winter. I did, but I moved. Lake County cares a lot about this, and I don't hear you saying a lot about Lake County, because Lake County, I go to Tallahassee and talk to my legislators, and they care a lot about conservation.
You're a great segue, because the third project that we want to do is in Lake County. This is the city of Winter Garden, Newton Park. Magnolia Park is a county park, so the county. And the primary advocates for the money that we got $600K last year, 1.9 this year, and we're going to ask for $2 more million next year, $2.5 million next year. Senator Keith Truenow, who is Lake County, and Representative Taylor Yalkowski and Representative Doug Bankson are the local legislative delegation, and they've been very, very supportive and proactive. And Keith Truenow definitely wants to do a Lake County project. So what we're proposing is Gordneck Spring. You know, Gordneck is that little tail on Lake Apopka that gives its distinctive shape. You can pick out, anybody can pick out Lake Apopka on a map. You give them 10 lakes, it's such a distinctive shape, that little tail down here at the bottom. So what you can do, what we're proposing there is, first you put wave attenuators to keep that, remember how I said the wind comes and whips everything up? If you put wave attenuators here to block that, and on the back side of it, you put emergent aquatic vegetation that comes up above the surface, and the wave attenuators protect it long enough for them to get rooted. And then in here, you put eelgrass and other native vegetation, and you give them calm enough water that they can survive and get rooted. And then after a certain amount of time, you take the wave attenuators out, and the emergents act as the wave attenuator. So that's the project that we've proposed for Lake County. And to be honest, we haven't thought beyond that. It's just like, okay, let's get that momentum. Let's get a city, Orange, and Lake, and then get everybody at the table and say, who wants the next project, and get them to raise their hand. And we agreed if Lake County would throw in some money for Newton Park, which is a City of Winter Garden project, that we would go help them get the money, state, federal, and they throw in some, one-third for Magnolia Park. And so anyway, that's our strategy. Eat the elephant one bite at a time for 30 years. And that's kind of where we are now. So the focus right now is how do we get that inertia started? How do we get that first project? We're desperate, working hard to get Newton Park done next year, hopefully. But one of the things I've also learned is you're going to hit hiccups, like the year that COVID came and we didn't get our money for the trail. Well, you just keep working and keep trying, and if we can get Newton Park done next year, and if we can't get it done next year, we'll do it in 2028. And I think we've convinced Orange County and our two commissioners, currently Christine Moore, District 2, Nicole Wilson, District 1, and Mayor Demings, and actually Mike Scott, who's the next district over, all on board with helping us with this, both projects. If we can get them the next year, whether it's 2027 for Newton Park, 2028 for Magnolia Park, or if we shift out a year, just the important thing is to sequence it. And we did a $300,000 engineering study of the Newton Park one, and that was 3 years ago. We convinced St. John's to put up $200K and the city put up $100K. And the city manager said, okay, that's a pretty good deal. I only $100,000, I get an engineering study. So we got St. John's and the county to already agree, but they've already committed the money because it was discretionary to each of them put $150K in the pot for a $300,000 engineering study at Magnolia Park. So when the time comes and we finish at Newton Park, we've got the science available to move forward. So that's the thing, is get your first Keystone project started, get the second one in there, build some momentum, get the stakeholders involved with Lake County and Orange County and the district and the city, and build that momentum, and then over to my grandsons. Thank you very much. Your turn. I don't know how we're doing on time. So I went through that pretty quick. Did you have any questions about?
Something I wonder about is, now we've gone through since the 70s and we've messed everything up in our world and our country. We've done the wrong things. Hopefully now you're getting these millions of dollars we're going to repair what we've tore up in the last few years. Hopefully we're going to train our civilization how to maintain and take care of it. Are we doing that?
I hope so. And, I tend to be an optimistic person, and you describe sustainability, and that's kind of a watchword for everything in these days. And if you think back to when they were putting pollutants in this lake, they weren't being malicious. They didn't know any better. We didn't know DDT was harmful until the early 70s. So I think we're getting smarter as we go along. I'd like to believe that, and I'd like to believe that sustainability is something that's important to everybody. Sometimes our governmental actions don't necessarily reflect that, but as long as citizens have a voice, I think all of us have an obligation to raise those voices. And we have, and if you want to know more, FOLA.org is our website, and we're on Facebook. And I think we have a couple hundred members, but even more importantly, I think, I'm not a social media guy. I'm a dinosaur. So we have 2,650 followers on Facebook, and when I go to the legislature, when I go to the mayor, when I go to the city manager, when I go to the county commissioners, I'm representing 2,670 people, not just Joe Dunn. And that gives us some power and some voice. And this is actually a lot of fun for me, because who's against this? I mean, this is apple pie. I mean, who's against apple? So it is actually fun, because almost every single legislator I talk to at any level says, yes, this is something we ought to do. So I'm hopeful.
I just want to answer your question a little bit as a mom of kids in the district in Lake County. This generation that we're raising cares way more than you think. They are doing amazing things. My daughter wants to be an aeronautical meteorologist. We're here because of that, okay? These kids that are doing research, they're trying to solve AI and how can we make it not so scary. That's what they look at censorship. They're looking at all those things, and they're doing it in the counties we live in Orange County and Lake County. And so I think we have a very bright future, because I know those legislators you mentioned. I communicate with them. Lake County cares. I believe Orange County cares.
Agreed.
And I think we're going to get all of these ecosystems much better in the next 20 years. I really do.
I agree. And Oakland Nature Preserves, I said their mission is education. Jim Thomas had a conviction that if you got the kids, you got the parents. And that is 100% true. Those summer camps over there, those kids go home and talk to their parents about what they learned that day or that week. And, Winter Garden stopped doing recycling. And I was furious, and I talked to the mayor and the city manager. But that spawned Plant Street Recycling. Have you any of you heard how that started? Yeah. The owner, the guy that created it, daughter came to him and said, "Daddy, I want to move to Claremont." Why do you want to move to Claremont? Because they do recycling in Claremont. And the light bulb went on, I got to do something here. And he and his friend got together and built a business. $25 a month. They come one day a week. You single stream, which I think is the worst thing that ever happened to recycling because people started getting lazy. When you had to sort it, you did it consciously. When they said throw it in, and that's what happened with Winter Garden. People were throwing paint cans and taking all their recyclables and put them in plastic bags and negating, and the city didn't want to deal with that. But these guys will sort it for you. You just put it out. I was spending more than $25 a month going back and forth to Porter Transfer Station over here in Orange. So that if you get the kids, you really do get the parents.
I was just going to ask, what else can we do to help?
Well, join FOLA. I don't want to usurp Christie's pitch to join Winter Garden Heritage. I'm a member of both. You can join FOLA. We have the bike ride. We look for volunteers. There'll be one of the processes with the Newton Park dredging is that we have to do public education. So once we come up with an engineering solution, we have to communicate that so everybody knows. So pay attention for that and find out what's going on with that. And if you see something, raise your voice. I mean, because we have a tremendous amount of power collectively. I was very fortunate last year that the Florida Lake Management Society, a statewide organization, gave me Volunteer of the Year award. And I told them, I can't do much, but we can do anything. And I really believe that if we work together, we can accomplish anything. All we have to do is be like-minded and stubborn as hell.
That's the transplant in you. That's stubborn as hell.
Sorry?
So you said you're a transplant. You weren't born here, right?
No, I'm a transplant.
Yeah, so am I. And I'm a Jersey, Iowa, Missouri. So that's just all stubborn.
And I've lived all over the country and in Europe for 4 years. And not all communities are as passionate and caring as this one is. And I've seen a lot of different ones, but I really feel fortunate to live in West Orange County because we do have a caring, engaged community. Anytime you see something going on, our folks are involved. They care. They want to know what's going on. They want to get involved. That's not the norm everywhere in my experience. So we're very, very fortunate to live in this community. Winter Garden specifically, and West Orange and East Lake. Any other questions? Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come out on Earth Day and find out about the lake, and we'll try to keep everybody posted on what's going on with our campaign for turbidity. But when you're in these long journeys, things happen in very incremental steps. So sometimes people think, oh, well, nothing's really going on. It doesn't mean we're not trying hard as heck. It just means that it takes a while to see the results. We got our $600,000 grant from FDEP last September, and we still don't have an approved grant plan from Tallahassee because they're so overworked. Every grant manager has 50 projects, and so it takes a while. And it's funny, as a retired aerospace guy, I'm not used to being patient, boom, 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 get things done. And I've had to change my mode 100% because I can't increase the pay of any of my volunteers. And depending on which governmental level you're dealing with, I was used to federal at Lockheed Martin, but state, county, municipal, everything takes time, and when you start folding them all together exponentially. But we've been very, very fortunate because we have a very effective legislative delegation, and we got caring community. The mayor and John Reese and John Williams here are all in on this, and the commissioners. I've worked with every single one of the commissioners: Ileana Jones, Lisa Bennett, Chloe, Colin. They're all in. Our 2 county commissioners. So once you get all of those people rowing in the same direction, good things happen. But there are constraints. I mean, it's a legitimate concern what's going to happen with property tax reform and how is it going to affect the budgeting for the county and the city. So we just got to be tenacious. That's all. Awesome. Well, thanks again for taking the time to come out. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate it. I just want to mention to everybody, of course, we left over, so feel free to take some if you'd like. And then also, if you want to keep up to date on the, excuse me, if you want to keep up to date on any future lunch and learns we may have, you can sign up for our newsletter and see what's going on with the Winter Garden Heritage Foundation and around town. And you can also see the membership sheets that we have on the table today, and at all of our lunch and learns. You guys are all students today. You learned a lot from Joe, so we will honor a student rate for attendees of our lunch and learns. So it's $25, and it lasts for 1 year. So thank you guys again, and appreciate you guys all coming out. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.